Hello everyone. We will be discussing and talking about a technology called remote sensing. And once we get the images or data from this method of sensing objects or phenomena, we will then be talking about how we do information extraction from the data that we get from this method. So that is called visual interpretation of images. The images can also be interpreted by using a digital method, which will be taken up later. Now, scientists are always involved in data collection for observation and doing different kinds of research activities. So, observation, measurement, and collection of data forms a very important part of scientific studies. So, the methods of data collection can be either in situ measurements, that is, we take our instruments to the actual location and then take the measurement, or we can do the same thing by placing the instrument at a remote location. Both methods have their advantages and disadvantages. That is, when we take in situ measurement, that is physical measurements, we are absolutely sure of what we are measuring. So the measurements are pure uh, measurements, that is, they are not mixed with other kinds of measurements. For example, if we take a thermometer and take the temperature of a person, then this has to be physically placed in contact with the body of that person, and then we will get the temperature. Here, in this kind of measurement, there are certain inconsistencies. That is, there could be errors, or we could be affected by a limited coverage because we are going very near to the object and have to be in physical contact with it. So therefore, we get to see or we get to measure only a small amount or a small area of that object or phenomena. And therefore, if it is a large study area, then it will take a lot of time. Also, it is intrusive method. That is, we need to actually be at the location, and in case of some reason we are not able to physically be present due to inaccessibility, etc., then measurements are not possible. Whereas the method of remote sensing lets us take observations from a distance. So the term itself, remote sensing, means that it is the science and technology of observing an object, scene, or phenomena by instrument based techniques. And because this observation is done from a distance without physical contact with the object of interest, therefore it is called remote. And because we are doing sensing, that is detection of energy, usually this energy in our case is light energy, but we are not restricted to only light energy. We can use other forms of energy like sound energy, etc., also for this measurements. The ultimate result is that it enables us to observe and study nature in ways that would otherwise not be possible by human capability. Uh, at great distances and also through wavelengths of light which are invisible to the human eyes. Now, how remote can this instrument be placed, or how remote is the remote that we are calling it? We can have uh, ground based measurements, or we can mount the sensor on an aerial platform and then do aerial photography. Or in case of Earth orbiting satellites, if we use them as platforms and put sensors on board these Earth orbiting satellites, we can take space-borne measurements. So right from ground to space, these platforms can be placed for remote sensing purposes. Now this method began right at the time when the invention of photography happened, that is, the invention of cameras occurred in the 1800s. The first aerial photograph was taken from a hot air balloon. This was because the invention of the camera predates the invention of the aircraft. And therefore, in the earlier days of remote sensing, platforms such as balloons, kites, and even pigeons were used, and cameras or sensors were mounted on these platforms, or kites sometimes, and they were flown over the study area. This began basically with the objective of doing military studies or strategic studies and taking observations of areas of hostile terrain where it was not possible to actually do measurements. Now, during World War One and World War Two, by that time the aircrafts had also been invented and cameras were mounted on these platforms for taking measurements in the enemy terrain or hostile areas. Then, uh, in 1957, with the launch of Sputnik 1, uh, the spaceborne measurements or spaceborne observations began. Uh, in 1960, the first meteorological satellite was launched, and in 1972, the first civilian Earth observation program by the USA, now known as Landsat, earlier called the ERTS, Earth Resource Technology Satellite mission, was launched, and this started the Earth observation for natural resources monitoring and other civilian applications in 1972 with spaceborne methods. Now, for this method, we use sensors, that is the cameras, and platforms, that is the satellites, which are used to create image data. But please remember that remote sensing data could be other data other than image data also. So, a sensor would be a device that records electromagnetic energy, and platforms would be carrier beds that are used to carry these sensors. Now, what is the advantage of using this method of taking measurements? The biggest advantage is that it gives us global coverage, especially from the spaceborne platforms. So, when a satellite is launched and it moves in its fixed orbit, it gives us images of all around the globe at fixed periods of time. So, repeatability is also a big advantage. That is, we get repeated data throughout the mission or life of the satellite. Repeatability lets us do analysis of change over a period of time. So, suppose there has been an earthquake or a landslide or a tsunami or a cyclone. So, if we take pre event images and we look at post event image data, we will be able to assess the change that has happened and where that change has happened. So, repeating data is important in this sense. Also, because we are placing the satellite or the sensor at a vantage point high above the surface of the earth, we are able to get a synoptic view, and with this synoptic view we are able to look at a large area at one instance of time in the form of an image, and we are also able to see objects in relation with one another. So we are able to establish some context between objects which are in the vicinity or proximity of the object that we are trying to study. If we look at the economics or the cost, uh, remotely sensed technology or methods based on remote sensing data ultimately turn out to be more economically feasible and give us data which we are able to analyze faster instead of physical measurements and manual efforts. However, this is not the answer to all our problems. There are limitations to the technique, and although it often provides a very useful source of data to study environmental processes, it usually at some points of time does not give us all the solutions. But it is a useful tool for several applications. Now, the applications could also be many and diverse. There are a few examples that have been given here. So, we could look at change that has happened over a period of time. So, if you look at these images from 1987 to 2000, we see that there has been a lot of degradation in the vegetation. Also, sea surface temperature measurements can be taken. The phytoplankton concentration can be seen through satellite images. If there has been something like an oil spill, the area with the oil spill can be mapped, and then uh, action can be taken about how to mitigate the effect. Pollution like thermal pollution or industrial pollution can also be studied. If hurricanes or cyclones occur, then they can be tracked. Geological studies can be done, volcanoes can be studied. We can look at forestry applications, that is how what is the kind of vegetation, where the vegetation is it shrinking, like the change detection that is being done here. And it can also be used for applications like agriculture, civil engineering, utility mapping, and so on. Now, the basic process of remote sensing or the physical process involves the prerequisite of having an energy source. uh, Usually, the sun is the most commonly and freely available source of energy. So, the sun's energy or electromagnetic radiation is used for remote sensing purposes, and this kind of method of sensing is known as the passive method of remote sensing, wherein the sensor is dependent on an external source of energy. Now, the electromagnetic radiation from the sun travel through the atmosphere where they interact with the constituents of the atmosphere, and then they reach the surface of the earth or the feature of interest, interact with whatever targets it encounters, say vegetation, built up area, urban area, water bodies, and so on. After this interaction, the energy is reflected or emitted towards the sensor. Now, only that amount of energy which is sent towards the sensor is measured by it and is then provided to users as image data, and then they use it for different kinds of analysis or applications like land use mapping or atmospheric studies, geological studies or vegetation related studies, or even for disaster management. Now, since we are talking about electromagnetic radiation, we should be familiar with the electromagnetic spectrum. Uh, Without realizing, we are using the electromagnetic portions of the electromagnetic spectrum in everyday life also. So, for example, when you listen to the radio or when you watch television, or maybe heat or cook dinner in a microwave oven, we are making use of these electromagnetic waves. Now, the electromagnetic spectrum is basically an arrangement of these wavelengths in increasing or decreasing order as per their wavelength or frequency. So we have shorter wavelengths, that is the gamma rays, the X rays, and the ultraviolet rays. And then we come to the visible portion of the spectrum, and this is the portion of the spectrum where human beings are sensitive to be able to see and sense. Beyond this is the infrared wavelength, which incorporates the near infrared and the far infrared or the thermal wavelengths. And these are longer wavelengths after the infrared, that is the microwave or radar wavelengths, and the longest ones, that is the radio waves, which you use for communication. So basically, the process of remote sensing is essentially studying interaction of electromagnetic radiation with different objects of interest. For example, land, water, atmosphere, and other planets. So we can do planetary studies also with remote sensing. Uh, Therefore, it becomes very, very important to understand the properties of the electromagnetic radiation under various conditions, and this is fundamental to understand the process of remote sensing and ultimately being able to extract the information from the images or for interpretation. So, for the interpretation, how the object will look like on the image, we need to be aware of what interactions take place within the atmosphere. So, the two major interactions are scattering and absorption. Scattering occurs when particles or large gas molecules that are present in the atmosphere interact with and cause the electromagnetic radiation to be redirected from its original path. And absorption causes the molecules in the atmosphere to absorb energy at various wavelengths. Ozone, carbon dioxide, and water vapor are the main constituents in the atmosphere which absorb radiation. Now, because of these two atmospheric effects, uh, a phenomena called attenuation takes place, and the energy that remains after these uh, atmospheric effects is what reaches the target of interest. And it is that amount of energy which interacts with the targets on the surface of the earth. Now, after the physical process of remote sensing has happened, the image has been captured or collected by the sensor. Once the user looks at the image, how is it that you define different objects or groups of pixels that fall into different categories, or how do you label it into a land use or land cover category? Now, this is done with the help of spectral signatures or clues that we gather from the image, and therefore we look for identity of these pixels on the image based on their spectral properties. So a spectral signature or a signature in general is something which gives an object or piece of information its identity. So for example, when you go to the bank or when you go to get your passport made, you are required to give certain parameters like biometric parameters or your signature, which will be used as a sample to give you an identity as a person. Similarly, parameters that we can read from the image translate into spectral signatures. So, how features reflect or absorb radiation in different wavelength regions is depicted in the form of a graph or a plot. And if these are plotted, wavelengths are plotted on one axis and the percentage reflectance on the other axis, the graphs for different features tell us how they will look like in ideal conditions. So, the physical condition of the object has great significance here. So, if you see, clear water gives us a graph like this, wherein we see that it reflects very little energy in the visible portion and most of it is absorbed in the infrared. Similarly, it reflects more in the vegetation, green vegetation reflects more in the infrared, and therefore vegetation will appear as a bright feature in the infrared band and water will appear as a dark feature, provided vegetation is healthy and green and water is clear. So polluted water will have a different changed spectral signature, and it is with this physical changes that are made visible or manifested through spectral signatures that the interpreter extracts information. Now, before going further into interpretation, let us also quickly look at how a digital image looks like. So it is an array-like structure where we have grids or cells or pixels. So each row and column makes up a square or rectangular area, which is called a picture element or pixel. And each pixel has a digital number which represents the spectral value. So this is a pixel, and any values that the computer system is able to read is called the digital number. Then once the image is available, how do we decide which would be the best kind of data set for different kinds of applications? This is based on the four kinds of resolutions or characteristics which define the type of image data. That is spectral resolution, spatial resolution, radiometric resolution, and temporal resolution. So, spectral resolution basically means the number of bands in the spectrum in which the instrument is capable of taking measurements, and also the width of the wavelength band which is generating the image. Now, narrow bandwidths translate into higher spectral resolution. So, depending on this, we can have different kinds of color composite, that is true color composite or false color composite. Then we come to spatial resolution. This is basically the physical dimension of the smallest area, that is the pixel, that is seen at one instance of time. It also refers to the amount of detail that we can see through the sensor. So, in case the numerical value associated with the pixel, for example, if a pixel is 1 meter spatial resolution, that is one resolution cell is 1 meter by 1 meter, then it is called the spatial resolution of the cell is 1 meter. And if it is 1 kilometer, then we see less amount of detail. This you can see here. So at 80 meters, very little detail. And when we go up to 10 meters, the details become clearer. So these are the kind of spatial resolutions available from satellite platforms from 1 kilometer to less than 1 meter. So different kinds of applications can use different kinds of data sets at different spatial resolutions. Now these images will let you appreciate that as spatial resolution becomes better, how the features become clearer on the image. So this is approximately 60-meter pixel size, 30-meter pixel size. So you see features have started emerging. At 15 meters, we are now able to see faintly the boundaries of these features. This is 6 meters approximately, but it is a single band panchromatic data, and therefore no color or spectral information is attached. Now at this resolution of 4 meters and spectral information attached, we are able to see and appreciate the individual features and the clarity with which we are able to interpret them. So we are able to see the boundaries of the fields, the buildings, vegetation, roads, etc. The same at 1 meter, higher spatial resolution, but without the spectral characteristics. Then we have radiometric resolution, which means the sensitivity of the sensor to small differences in radiation or energy when it is taking observations. That means how many number of gray levels is the sensor sensitive to measuring. So, with higher radiometric resolution, it describes the sensor's ability to discriminate very slight differences in energy. So, finer radiometric resolution of a sensor, the more sensitive it will be to detecting small differences in reflected or emitted energy. Temporal resolution, as the name itself is suggesting, it is the frequency with which a satellite can revisit an area of interest and acquire a new image. So this different applications may require different kinds of revisit periods or temporal resolution. Therefore, we can use this temporally varying data for looking at changes that have happened over a period of time. Now, what are the platforms? We have discussed this earlier. However, let us go through them again. Platforms could be ground based or airborne or spaceborne. Then we can also have satellites which are geostationary satellites which are placed at about 36,000 kilometers, an altitude of 36,000 kilometers, and they give us global coverage. These are used for, they give you poor spatial resolution details. However, large areas are observed at one time because it is focused on one area and is used for communication and meteorological application. Then we have sun synchronous satellites, that is, these are also called polar satellites, polar orbit satellites, and the altitude is about 700 to 800 kilometers. These have a fixed equator crossing time, that is the local sun time for crossing the equator for uh, different places is fixed, and the satellite orbital plane is near polar and the altitude is such that the satellite passes each place at the same local sun time. So there are several such satellites: Landsat, Spot, the IRS series, that is the Indian series, and several others. So the IRS series is the Indian series, and we have several others from Europe, Japan, USA, etc. Then the sensors, that is the satellites that we are operating placed on these platforms, we could do this through the sensing process through the passive sensing, that is the external source of illumination is required, and when the platform carries its own source of illumination, mostly in the microwave remote sensing area, then it is called a active method of sensing. So sensors, examples of some sensors are the multispectral scanner, the thematic mapper, the enhanced thematic mapper on the Landsat series of satellites, the LIS and the PAN sensors on the IRS series of satellites. Then these are microwave satellites. The WIFs and AWIFs are also Indian satellites, and there are several others. Now we come to the last portion of the discussion, where once we have the image with us, we are able to do image interpretation or analysis through either the visual method or the digital method. For the current discussion, we will focus only on the visual method of interpretation. That is, we are looking at the image in a hard copy or on displayed on a screen, and we are doing the interpretation or extraction of information with a manual method. So interpretation basically means the recognition of targets on the image, or these targets are recognized and they are used as information for further planning activities. So observing the difference between the targets and their backgrounds involves comparing the different targets to any or all of the visual elements of interpretation. These elements of interpretation are tone, shape, size, pattern, texture, shadow, and association. So tone refers to the relative brightness or color of objects, and this is the fundamental element of distinguishing between different targets or features. So if we have a color image with spectral information, we are able to see different tones of colors. If it's a black and white image or single bands are displayed, then we get bright or dark gray shades. Shape, the next element, is the general form or structure or outline of individual objects, and there are certain shapes which are always associated with certain features. Like linear shapes are associated with roads, elliptical shapes or circular shapes can be associated with um, playing fields or athletic fields, etc., or stadiums, and so on. Then the size of the object on the image becomes a function of its scale or resolution. So while assessing the size of the object, it is recommended that you look at the object in relation or relative to other objects in the scene, as well as to the absolute size of the object, to help in interpretation of that target. Then the element of pattern refers to the spatial arrangement of visibly discernible objects, that is, the objects that we can distinguish between visibly on the image. Also, there would be a pattern if the objects are arranged in an orderly repetition of similar tones and textures, and this will produce a distinctive or recognizable pattern on the image. For example, let us take forest vegetation and orchards. So orchards, because they are man-made features or planted by humans, they will be planted in rows and columns, and from the vantage point of either a air-based platform or a space-based platform, this pattern will be recognizable. These rows and column will be recognizable. Whereas if it is a forest vegetation, it will grow haphazardly. Similarly, urban streets with regularly spaced houses and slum areas where no pattern is followed are good examples of this element. Now we come to the element of texture. This refers to the arrangement and frequency of tonal variation in different areas of the image. This means that if we are able to analyze that tones change frequently in a small area on the image, then the visual appearance of that area would be rough texture. So you can see here there is a rough texture because there are several tones in this area. However, where there is homogeneously occurring tone, this gives a visually smooth appearance of texture on the image. So rough textures would consist of mottled tone, where gray levels change abruptly in a small area, and smooth textures would have very little tonal variations. Then the element of shadow provides an idea of the profile and relative height of target or targets, which makes identification easier. However, sometimes shadows act as obstructions, and the area that is covered by the shadow is in poor contrast, and therefore the interpreter is not able to extract information properly. But in some cases, it gives us a rough idea of the object having some height, and rough estimation of this height can also be made with the length of the shadow. The element of association takes into account the relationship between recognizable objects or the features that occur in the proximity or nearby areas to the target of interest. For example, commercial properties would always be associated with proximity to major transportation routes, whereas residential areas would be associated with playgrounds, sports fields, parking areas, etc. They are both built up areas. However, the element of association can be used to make a distinction between these features. For example, if there is a lake, you could associate it with boats or marina or adjacent recreational features and so on. Industrial areas could be associated also with features like chimneys, shed-like storage buildings, and chemical tanks, etc. Now, this is just a compilation of a few online resources that are available. Both you can look at uh, online resources from where you can access freely available satellite data, and there is also this geoportal called Bhuvan from where you can look at various products that are generated through remote sensing. With this, we come to the end of the session. Thank you.